This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Official Pakistani sources announced that a suicide attack killed at least 10 people and injured several others in a market near the Red Mosque. Most of the reported victims were policemen. The blast came just hours after clashes erupted between radical students from the religious schools and the police force. Radicals reoccupied the mosque after the Pakistani government officially reopened the mosque's doors to the worshippers.
Radical students reoccupied the Red Mosque in Pakistan's capital, Islamabad, which was reopened 2 weeks after the Pakistani army led a series of deadly attacks on the armed radicals hiding inside. The protesters painted the walls of the mosque red, which had recently been changed to a peach color during government renovations. There were hundreds of radicals, including a number of ex-students of the religious schools that used to be a part of the Red Mosque. They insulted the new imam, Maulana Ishfaq Ahmad, who was recently appointed by the Pakistani government to hold prayers, and kicked out the worshippers, who had gathered in large numbers. The hundreds of demonstrators called for the return of the mosque's prior chief cleric, Imam Abdul Aziz, who has been detained by the Pakistani authorities, and demanded that he hold prayers instead of the Imam Ishfaq Ahmad. They chanted degrading slogans against the Pakistani president, Pervez Musharraf, and in support of Abdul Rashid Ghazi, the late rebel leader of the Red Mosque armed confrontations, that was killed by the Pakistani authorities after he refused to surrender. Pakistani policemen surrounded the mosque but did not enter the premises. They used tear gas and bombs to disperse the crowd, who in return bombarded them with rocks. Tight security was seen around the capital, especially near the airport and mosques, where people were thoroughly searched. Ramzi al-Masri, Al-Arabiya. Ramzi al-Masri, Al-Arabiya.
The Special Inquiry Commission submitted its final report to President Mahmoud Abbas with recommendations that dozens of officers and commanders be fired and demoted or required to take retirement. Abbas's aide, Nabil Amr, said that it is important to form a national committee to investigate Hamas's role in events in Gaza, but Hamas said that the report proves the security agencies were corrupt.
After the inquiry commission spent weeks investigating and questioning Fatah's commanders and security officers, it recommended that dozens of commanders and officers be fired, demoted, or tried in a military court. President Abbas promised to do just that.
The committee's recommendations will be fully implemented so that, as appropriate, those who deserve it will be punished and those who did their duty will be rewarded.
The Inquiry Commission submitted its final report to Abbas, explaining the reasons for the security agency's failures and suggesting a plan for their restructure to make them more modern and professional. The report criticized the recruitment process in the security agencies, saying that some recruits were selected on the basis of factionalism, while others were recruited randomly and without the use of correct procedures. The report also pointed out some shortcomings in the leadership on the ground and in the performance of the operation room that was formed by President Abbas during the Gaza events.
We call for putting a plan in place for restructuring the Palestinian security agencies. We do not need security agencies that are based on factionalism and political biases. Rather, they should be established on a professional basis.
The commission, which includes lawyers and military experts, has 9 panelists, and it is headed by the president's chief of staff. The commission questions senior officials within the Palestinian Authority and security agencies, including President Abbas, before submitting a 200-page report. However, some Palestinians expressed the need to establish an independent commission to investigate the events that took place in Gaza.
Investigating what happened in Gaza, only from a security point of view, does not give a completely accurate picture. As I said, what happened in Gaza has political and national implications. An independent national inquiry committee should have been established to study the reasons behind what happened in Gaza.
The Commission's report called for forming a national investigation committee along with Hamas. However, Hamas's spokesman said that the report proves that security agencies were corrupt.
The report shows that there was widespread corruption in these security agencies. It also shows that Rashid Abu Shabak and Mohammed Dahlan were responsible for what happened in Gaza. The Hamas movement also holds President Abbas responsible for what happened because he is the commander of these security agencies.
Making recommendations and conclusions might be the easiest part of the task that the Palestinian Authority has taken upon itself. The challenge is the implementation of the Commission's recommendations, especially the ones calling for restructuring the security agencies. In fact, all Palestinian factions, without any exception, have agreed on the need for this restructuring a long time ago.
The families of Palestinian prisoners held a protest outside the Red Cross in Gaza to express their outrage with Abbas's prisoner swap deal, which he reached with the prime minister of the enemy government. According to the deal, 255 prisoners from Fatah were released.
The Islamic resistance movement, Hamas, will continue to show solidarity on the Monday of the following weeks with the families of prisoners held in Israeli jails. The prisoners' families who held a protest outside the Red Cross in Gaza City expressed their outrage with the prisoners' swap deal that was reached between the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, and the prime minister of the enemy Zionist government, Ehud Olmert. In compliance with the deal, the Zionist occupation released 255 prisoners from the Fatah movement.
Just as the families of prisoners in the West Bank celebrated the release of their imprisoned sons, we also want to celebrate the liberation of our sons in Gaza. All Palestinian prisoners must be released, regardless of their prison sentences. We also want our sons in the West Bank to return to Gaza because we have not been able to see them for 6 years.
The families of prisoners in Gaza reminded Abbas of the equal importance of releasing their sons the same way he ensured the release of prisoners in the occupied West Bank. They said that their suffering should never be used in partisan politics.
He should work for the release of the prisoners from Gaza, just like he worked for the release of prisoners from the West Bank. These are our sons, and we want to live happily with them. We do not want them to spend their lives in prison. We want to celebrate their liberation. Abu Mazen must work for their release. All countries must stand by the Palestinian people and all our prisoners.
Hamas's spokesman confirmed that the movement will continue on the path of resistance until all prisoners are freed from the Zionist occupation's prisons.
The plight of the prisoners is a central issue for Hamas. It's a national plight, and it should not be used in partisan politics. Hamas will exert all efforts using public media, political, military, and security resources to liberate the prisoners so they can return to their families and their homes.
The plight of the prisoners is a central issue. It is one of the most dangerous unresolved issues. The prisoner swap deal has taken this plight to a dangerous level because partisan and favoritism were prioritized over the main issue.
Israel Navy Commander Major General David Ben-Baasht submitted his resignation to IDF Chief of Staff Gabi Ashkenazi last night, ending his 3-year term as Navy Chief. Ashkenazi and Defense Minister Ehud Barak accepted Ben-Baasht's letter and thanked him for his 37 years of military service. The resignation comes in the wake of severe criticism of naval failures during the Second Lebanon War, primarily those that failed to prevent the Hezbollah missile attack on the Khanit Navy vessel in which 4 sailors were killed and dozens were injured on the 3rd day of the war. Ben-Baasht will officially leave his post in October, 6 months before he was supposed to have ended his term. Leading candidates for his replacement are Brigadier General Yuval Tzur and Brigadier General Eli Marom, both of whom formerly served as Naval Headquarters Chief. The re-election of Turkish Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan and the return of the Islamic Justice and Development Party to power will not threaten Turkish-Israeli relations. On the contrary, ties may only strengthen. This according to Turkey's ambassador to Israel, Namik Tan.
It will expand and flourish. We have a powerful government, and this government, if it continues, we don't know yet, but it seems that it will. And there will be a growing relationship, flourishing relationship in every walk of life. This government has already taken the relationship to new heights, and of course they are determined to make it even bigger. Therefore, I am sure that we will have a really big cooperation in the coming years.
The Lebanese army says it's making significant gains in its battle with Fatah al-Islam fighters at the Nahr al-Bared refugee camp. An army officer has said that advances further into the camp and weakening resistance has allowed soldiers to carry out house-to-house battles. 2 soldiers were killed in overnight fighting in the 10-week siege that has now killed almost 250 people. France's foreign minister is heading to Lebanon to try and help the feuding political factions reconcile. It's Bernard Kouchner's 2nd visit to the troubled country in the last 2 months. But political observers say there's little chance of an end to the 8-month standoff during his 2-day visit, as both the government and opposition are still refusing to budge. Here's Zaina Khodar.
Yet another political crisis looms in Lebanon, the presidency. Time is running short. On September the 25th, the first round of voting should take place in Parliament. But the Speaker of the House, who is in the opposition, has not convened the legislature for months. They consider the government unconstitutional after the resignation of 6 ministers.
Let's not forget that the re-election or the prolongation of President Lahoud was the beginning of the crisis. So the crisis of presidency is really serious and dangerous for Lebanon.
In comes France. Envoy Jean-Claude Cousseron was in Beirut earlier this week to try to set a date for the rivals to resume dialogue and reach a consensus on the presidency. In mid-July, Paris hosted a conference that brought together rival factions for the first time in months. They broke the ice, but participants said there was no tangible progress. The Arab League has tried many times to mediate and failed. The question now is, can France succeed?
The final solution has to include the United States. And do the French have the US support? No. The United States does not give a mandate to anybody.
Cousseron visited Syria as part of a tour of countries concerned with the Lebanese crisis to discuss the initiative. Paris said it didn't mark a change in policy towards Syria following the election of Nicolas Sarkozy. Observers say the deadlock in Lebanon cannot be resolved in isolation from the regional crises, like the Iranian struggle with the Americans and the Saudis on the one hand, and the Saudi-Syrian rift on the other. All these powers wield influence here. The opposition, which has been camping outside Government Palace since December, wants a national unity cabinet formed before presidential elections. The Constitution states the Prime Minister and cabinet should continue to perform their duties in case of failure to elect a new head of state.
The safety net is that with Taif agreement that the Council of Ministers will be ruling. This is, I believe, the only entrance to the solution.
But so far there is no agreement on a candidate, threatening a power vacuum or the creation of two rival governments. The army commander has warned he would resign if two competing governments emerged as the result of the presidential vacancy, saying he would not tolerate a political divide that would threaten the country's unity. Zana Khudr, Al Jazeera, Beirut.
Iraqis are in desperate need for help so they can once again live in dignity. The following report is about the difficult living conditions of Iraqi refugees in Jordan. Our correspondent reports about the ongoing international conference on Iraqi refugees held in Amman.
The International Conference on Iraqi Refugees opened in Amman. It ignored the reasons why these refugees fled their homes and focused instead on their humanitarian conditions as refugees living in Jordan, Syria, and other countries. What is expected of this conference? The objective is to generate financial and administrative support to improve the living conditions of Iraqi refugees, which explains why the participants avoided talking about ways to return them to their homes.
We hope that this conference will support the efforts exerted by Jordan and other countries hosting the Iraqi refugees, so our Iraqi brothers living in exile can receive better services.
The ideal solution is the return of the Iraqi refugees to their country, not to live abroad. We do not need another refugee problem in the Middle East.
This conference highlights the suffering of the Iraqi refugees living in exile. Iraqi refugees living in Jordan are not an exception. More than 700,000 Iraqi refugees live in the Kingdom of Jordan, causing it to demand additional medical and financial support. Jordan, like many other countries, continues to receive more Iraqi refugees who have been living their sad and happy days in exile, like this happy day when they got to celebrate Iraq's victory in the Asian Football Cup. Salwa Sawalka, Dubai Television, Amman.
سلوى السوالقة تلفزيون دبي عمان.
Saturday, July the 28th, marks the birth anniversary of Imam Ali, the first Imam who was also the son-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad. The joyous day has been designated in Iran as Father's Day. The staff at JNN English News Desk would like to extend congratulations to all viewers on the joyful occasion. Iran's foreign exchange reserves hover above $50 billion. This is what Economy Minister Dawood Danish Jafari said on Friday, adding the country has posted a 5.7% economic growth during the third development plan. He further said the government has decided to invest part of its national resources and foreign exchange reserves in the development projects, adding that is a shift of policy which used to deposit the capital in foreign accounts for receiving loans only. Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council Ali Larijani says Tehran's nuclear case has been politicized in one way or another. Larijani told a host of foreign reporters on Friday more than 10 ways can be worked out for the case, but that a technical solution seems to be readily within reach. He added the timeout plan raised by the IAEA Director General by no means means suspension, but that he means that two sides stay in the current place, not moving further. Larijani went on to say any plan on Iran's nuclear case can be brought on the table. The Iranian public is not willing to support giving up the enrichment of uranium for civilian use of nuclear energy. This according to a report by World Public Opinion Organization. The new poll, sponsored by Terror Free Tomorrow, also shows that 80% of Iranians favor trade and capital investment overall to create more jobs, and 79% want trade and capital investment in energy refineries to lower the price of gasoline, and technological assistance conditions for developing peaceful nuclear energy is also favored by 80% of Iranians. Foreign Minister Manouchehr Mottaki told the first gathering of Iranian university students and academics in Mashhad on Friday, Tehran backs the political process in Iraq, adding foreign presence in Iraq to seemingly restore security has proved counterproductive in the war-torn country. He further said Iran, being hit by UN sanctions, has inked or is to sign more than $50 billion worth of deals with foreign companies. Mottaki went on to say the enemy tried its best to make the world line up against Islam, but that the strategic viewpoints of the late Imam Khomeini and Islamic Revolution leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei have dealt a heavy blow to enemy attempts. Judiciary Chief Mahmoud Hashemi Shahrudi says the first gathering of the Islamic country's judiciary chiefs is to be held in autumn in Tehran. The visiting Iranian judiciary chief said this in a meeting with the head of the Senegalese Supreme Court. He added definitely such a get-together will help boost judicial relations among Islamic countries. Shahrudi also hoped for the establishment of a permanent judicial cooperation council for Islamic nations and underlined that such a council would be beneficial to the judicial systems. Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez says his country attaches significance to expansion and consolidation of ties with Iran. He said on Friday the Iranian Commerce Minister, who is currently in Caracas, is exchanging views with trade, industry and economy officials, trying to plan a boost in bilateral links. He added Caracas is determined to further work with Iran on economic, technical and industrial fronts. Commerce Minister Masoud Mirkazemi has explored ways of more cooperation with Venezuelan foreign, industry and economy ministers.
Historically, the city of Jericho has been considered an area rich with antiquities and sacred sites. The Father Andreas Church, which was built in the 4th century AD, is considered one of the most sacred sites in the city. More details in this report by Shadi Abu Hamada.
Palestine is a land loved by the prophets and messengers. With God's will, it became like a museum that tells the story of the 3 monotheistic religions. The city of Jericho is one of the oldest cities in the world. It witnessed one of the most important periods of the Christian era. The Father Andreas Church has a mosaic floor that can be dated to the 4th century AD. It was the home of the saint, Zaka al-Ashar, the head tax collector of the Roman state. It is said that he climbed the sacred Jumazi tree in order to have a view of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him. His home became the Coptic church of Saint Zaka al-Ashar after Christ had stayed in it. The Father Andreas Church is one of the main features of the Coptic pilgrimage during the holiday, the Feast of Epiphany, especially for the Egyptian Copts who cherish Palestine in their hearts. There has been a noticeable decline in Coptic pilgrimages to Palestine after Pope Shenouda III announced that the pilgrimage was prohibited after Israel occupied Jerusalem in 1967. Nevertheless, the church has managed to keep its doors open due to the large number of Copts who live in Palestine. Despite the difficulties, Jericho and its churches remain as pearls that decorate Palestine in all its majesty and sacred sites.
Bulgarian nurses accused of infecting Libyan children with HIV have been freed. But why did Libya finally agree to their release? What prompted French efforts to free the nurses? And who stands to gain? Answers to these questions and more on Link TV's Mosaic Intelligence Report.
In a bizarre ending to a long-running saga, the 5 Bulgarian nurses and Palestinian doctor jailed in Libya since 1999 for allegedly deliberately infecting some 400 Libyan children with the HIV virus were suddenly freed this week and flown to Bulgaria on board a French presidential jet. Earlier this month, France's President Nicolas Sarkozy twice sent his wife to Libya's capital Tripoli to lobby the country's leader Colonel Muammar Gaddafi for their freedom. France has saved the day, so it seems. But experts on European affairs assert that it was Benita Ferraro-Waldner, the EU's External Relations Commissioner, who had laid out all the groundwork for the nurses' release, and that Mr. Sarkozy stole her glory with the late intervention of his wife.
I would like to announce that my foreign minister, Bernard Kouchner, and I will go to Tripoli on a political visit in order to help bring Libya back to the international community.
But all that PR stuff is not important. What's important is that the French president has outmaneuvered all his European counterparts and the US by securing lucrative contracts for French companies with the oil-rich North African state. Sarkozy wasted no time after the event flying last Wednesday to Tripoli and cutting deals with the Libyans in defense, oil, gas, and civilian sectors. For his part, the Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi outfoxed the entire world by politicizing this strategy, enabling him to repatriate his country from a pariah state back to the bosoms of the international community. Everyone now loves Libya. This maneuvering by Gaddafi is not something new. It began in December 2003, shortly after the US discovered Saddam Hussein hiding in a foxhole. Gaddafi, fearing a similar fate, decided to declare that Libya would give up its nuclear program in return for lifting the international sanctions imposed on it since 1982. Gaddafi did not have a real nuclear program, and the equipment he handed over were obsolete. Yet, the US and Britain fell for his trick, using this as an opportunity to say that their policies had succeeded in making the colonel improve his morals and conduct. The sanctions were lifted and the United States resumed its diplomatic relations with the Gaddafi regime. Now, as the European press has been accusing the EU for succumbing to blackmail and France for benefiting from blood money, several Western countries, including the United States, have been competing to praise Gaddafi for his humanitarian role and are seeking closer ties with him. But several questions remain. Since the Libyan government still insists that the nurses are guilty, why did they really let them go? What happened to the final payment of compensations for the victims of the Pan Am 103 bombing over Lockerbie, Scotland in 1988? How did Libya get off the hook of the 1986 attack on a disco in West Berlin that was used by US servicemen? Were these forgotten in a bigger deal cut for oil? The simple answer to all these questions is yes. Oil and more oil. I'm Jamal Dajani for the Mosaic Intelligence Report. To learn more about this program or to share your thoughts, visit us at linktv.org/mosaic.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news. with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.